right. So right now I'm joined by a London native. He's a former Windsor Lancers running back, though, and he went on to be drafted by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the CFL. Played for them as well as the Hamilton Ticats and the Saskatchewan Riders, where they won the 2013 Grey Cup. Daryl Stephenson, welcome to the WinCity Sports Podcast, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Like, obviously, like I said, I want to talk about your Lancer days and stuff like that and beyond, but want to kind of get to know you a little bit too. So, born and raised in London, and I can imagine always a big sports kid growing up, or what?
Yeah, definitely. My whole family played sports. I was the youngest of four kids, and two of my older siblings played football. So I got in as early as I could with them. I was 6 years old when I first started playing football,
Okay.
and I played on their team, and it was a flag team. And yeah, played ever since, and grew up in East London. Went to Clark Road High School, and then went to Windsor from there.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So, like, everyone's got a different story, and a lot of times, I've talked to Tyrone Crawford, Brett Romberg, and I'm like, okay, so what's your like beginning stages of football? And they're like, high school.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, like that's it. So everyone's got a different story. You started playing before even high school, but I'm sure playing other sports too, right?
Yeah. Like I said, I was playing since I could when I was 6 years old, and it was a 13-year-old flag team. But I really wanted to play. My whole family played, and I just loved it. And I wanted to play as early as I could. So I played a lot of football and a lot of basketball growing up. I played rugby in high school. I boxed throughout high school. So I did a lot of sports. Tried out a lot of different ones, but football was always my number one. And I got into it early on. Just throughout with my family, and I remember my parents bought me best running backs in the NFL Network highlight video on VHS when I was like 6 years old, and I watched that so many times, and I really think, looking back, that was one of the big things that got me. I want to be a running back. I want to do that. I want to do what these guys are doing.
Yeah,
And I worked hard at it.
yeah, good, man. I mean, again, and then in the sport of football, there's so many different roles. Like, everyone, a lot of hockey players in Canada and in Windsor and stuff. So a lot of people say, oh, I got the Don Cherry Rock'em Sock'ems or something, and I knew I wanted to be in the NHL, right? So
Yeah.
to actually see like your path from a young age, especially in the game of football, is pretty unique. At least that I've been able to learn just talking to people. Everyone's got a different
Yeah.
story. But again, a lot of people just pick it up as they get older, but not as many people, dreaming to be a football player from 6 years old.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I guess you mentioned it. Your family was into it, but football was always like your favorite sport, right?
Yeah. My dad played the same high school as I did, and he played actually for Western.
Okay.
So the whole family was into it. My uncles, my brothers were into it. Even my sister played. She was captain of our high school football team, middle linebacker. So the whole family was into it.
Yeah.
And I pretty much couldn't escape it. I was going to be a football player.
Yeah, well, especially with your dad being a Mustangs alumni, basically, right? Like such a strong system out there too for so
Yeah.
many years. So many years they've been great, and again, we're talking about playing football as probably in high school, just throughout your whole high school career, doing what you need to do to get noticed, and get recruited. How did you end up in Windsor? I'm sure they weren't the only team or school, talking to you.
Yeah, I went through a big recruitment process in my last 2 years of high school. I was also playing in the summer leagues. It was the London Falcons back then. I think they're the London Mustangs now, in the OVFL. And so I was building a lot of tape, and my dad was helping me build some highlight tapes for different universities. And I would go to just about every single of those old Ron Diaz football camps that would happen to get exposure. And I had a couple offers from the States, but I was kind of a stubborn kid, and I really wanted to play running back, and a lot of those were to play things like tight end and safety. So I ended up thinking, I want to stay in Canada, and be somewhere close. If I'm not going to go somewhere far away to the States, I might as well be somewhere close. So I was kind of thinking Windsor, Western, Mac type thing. And the year before, I actually went to two of the games where Windsor beat Western at Western. So in my eyes, like this team was an up and coming team, and so I got to see it firsthand. And there's a lot of influences. And my sister actually lived down in Windsor when was looking around. So I ended up living with her in my first year. So just a lot of good reasons, and they had a really good school. They had a good program. I wanted to be in human kinetics, and that was a big draw down at Windsor. Just everything fit, I was happy with that decision for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, timing is everything, right? I mean, there could be
Yeah.
many other opportunities, but you got a place to stay. You got some ties to the city, to the team. I'm sure, like like you mentioned, the watching the games where they beat Western again, always known as a powerhouse, Western. So to see that,
Yeah.
probably, like, I was going to ask, what made you kind of look in that direction towards Windsor, and I guess that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah, and I can vividly remember being at those games and watching RJ Franklin return a bunch of balls, and I was like, these guys are good, and see them win, and it looked like something fun to be a part of. And then I went on their recruiting trips down at Windsor, and they all had that energy still, and it just seemed like a really fun and good place to go for football for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard decision to make, I'm sure, at that time. I mean, you're going 17, 18, 19 years old, get alone.
Exactly.
Doing all that
Yeah.
shit. And I'm sure, you probably wanted to, like you said, you wanted to stay Canada. Maybe you wanted to move around, but your dad having that Mustangs tie might have been like, I can do that, or I can go beyond what we know here in London, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of from what I've saw in university football, at least, a lot of players, when they grow up in one city, sometimes they just want to go and play in another city too, and that's a different thing too. It's like you want to go away for that university experience. And Western had a pretty good team. They had a good running back that was a young player that I competed with in high school, and there's a lot of reasons to go to Windsor, I think, and obviously I was very happy. I stayed there for 5 years, and I think I made the right choice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all part of the experience too. And like you said, you wanted to be a running back, so that's your role. That's where they needed you, right? So you want to go where you want to be needed too, right? Not just another
Yeah,
in the line.
exactly. And we went. Me and my dad went down on a recruiting trip to New Hampshire, and I remember sitting in the meeting room with the head coach, and he said, I was only about 205 pounds at that time. And he said, you're a pretty big guy. You're going to be probably 235, 240 eventually, and you'd be a good sized tight end. And they did offer me a scholarship, and I went back home, and I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to be that big, and I'm going to be a running back, a small, fast guy. And funny enough, 2 years later at Windsor, I was 240 pounds playing running back.
Yeah, if you
but I was like, those guys knew what they were talking about. Yeah.
If you read your profile, it's like he came in as a 6 foot, 240 pound, like exactly what you're saying right now.
Yeah. So they've seen enough big guys, and they know what I'm going to turn into, I guess.
And a little bit of a different aspect too. Like when you're going over to the States, I think like the football world is just so much bigger, of course. And
oh yeah,
like there's
such a business and such. Yeah, it's and I really like that about it. It was pretty cool. I went on a recruiting trip to Michigan State, and I got to stand on the sidelines and watch the game, and it's crazy over there. I wish we could replicate that intensity in Canada.
Yeah, and again, regardless of anything, you got to take advantage of those trips, right? And say you got to go to games and shit like that. It's cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, go on as many recruiting trips as you can, for sure.
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah.
But so you make it down to Windsor. Looks like success very early on. You're the OUA Football Rookie of the Year. And, during that year, given everything we kind of talked about before, were you kind of overwhelmed, or were you like, the hard work is paying off and I know I can do this?
It was a bit of both. I was pretty shocked when I scored on my first carry, and that was very shocking to me. And I had a pretty good game that game, and I remember thinking, that I can do this. I'm pretty good. And then the next game we played up at Laurier, and they were a very good team that year, and they held me to like 55 yards or something. And I remember just tanking after that, thinking, this is so much harder. So it was a bit of a roller coaster going back and forth. I knew that I had worked hard, and I knew that I was being touted and recruited as a good running back. So I thought other people saw me and had faith that I could do really well. So I did have a lot of confidence, and I was a confident kid, but there was definitely some ups and downs, and so many good athletes. I mean, I remember coming to Windsor thinking I was a pretty good athlete, and then seeing somebody like RJ and being like, okay, these guys are next level right here. So.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, you're always exposed and kind of shocked, opening your eyes to things when you start to move around the world, around the country. You know, you see again,
Yeah.
you used to, you know, everybody in London in the football game. I'm sure at that point, you know, and you're like,
Yeah.
these guys aren't so bad. We're like, London's the big bad boys. You go down here and never know who's popping in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing. So, right after that too. I mean, continued success for yourself throughout your whole 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
The
5. Yeah.
Lancers and some success for the team too. You know, you guys going to quarterfinals and semifinals majority of the years that you played for them, right?
Yeah, and well, we did pretty well. We turned it around the one year we had a 6-2 year, and did really well. And there was some tough games that we had and tough losses, but overall we really competed year in and year out, and it was a great experience doing that, fighting for Windsor, and we were usually the underdogs a lot of times, and I enjoyed that coming from that side.
Yeah, yeah, of course, man. I mean, the underdog, but still fighting, right? Still competing.
Yeah,
It's still there, you know. Still had a chance.
yeah,
It's not like you're completely out of it the whole 5 years.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think your second last year you were injured and like can only play like parts of the games and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I had a pretty bad hamstring, and it just acted up. I could barely finish like 1 to 2 quarters before. I remember I went to the physiotherapist on the team, and they had taped like a rubber tube down the back of my leg just to try to give me something, because I was so desperate. I was trying to get them to do anything,
Yeah.
and it broke off, and it was the first time I ran. And but yeah, that was a tough year. You know, battling with those injuries, it's mentally very tough, because you just want to compete and you want to go out there, and it's hard to you look slow out there because it's hard to run as much and as fast, and those injuries, yeah, it's tough battling through that, but it was a tough year. Happy I made it out and I was able to keep going, and it didn't progress into anything too much worse.
Yeah.
But definitely for that year it was pretty tough.
Yeah. I mean, your body's telling you one thing, your mind's telling you another, right? And
Exactly. Yeah.
they don't really work together at
Yeah.
that point. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and through all that, I mean, I think you come back the next year, you bounce back pretty well, and you end up, breaking all those records in your last year, and some still to this day, I'm sure, OUA records and Lancers records, like something to be proud of at that point.
Yeah, definitely proud of all that, and all the other guys that put in the hard work, the offensive linemen, and quarterbacks, receivers, everyone that was working hard back then and allowed me to have the success that I did. And looking back, it's nice to have those records, and I think it takes that consistent effort, and again, not being injured, and having a bit of luck that way, and just working hard year in and year out, and working with the guys around you.
Yeah, it's not the end all be all, but like again, from 6 years old on, you're thinking about winning the Super Bowl and stuff like that.
Yeah.
To have any kind of success and accomplishment, an award, it's got to be a little pat on the back kind of thing, right? At the very least.
Yeah. And when I was playing, I was very, very competitive, and I would be very upset when we lost games.
Yeah.
And I know even when I broke the record, I remember it was against Guelph, and we lost the game pretty bad, and that's all I thought about was losing, and I thought, to be good you got to win, and but now looking back, having a record and things like that, it was pretty neat, and it was pretty neat to be a part of that, and seeing all the other guys being excited about it. It was definitely pretty cool experience.
Yeah, and at that point, if it just ended there, at least you got that, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll talk more about Windsor, but before we start to get into like the CFL days, like I'm sure those days in Windsor for on the field, off the field, all the people you've met and memories are pretty close to you.
Yeah, I mean, I still have lots of friends in Windsor. I still make regular visits down there. My wife is from Windsor and her family, so it's definitely it's pretty much home to me anytime I think of Windsor. It's I really feel like I'm a part of that community, especially the sports community in Windsor. All the guys, like you said, a lot of the ones that you've interviewed, are good friends of mine, and it's a tight group, and it's pretty special to be a part of that. And Windsor was such a fun place to go to school. There's such good professors. There was good. We had great coaches. We had a good team. The atmosphere was good. That Windsor as a city was very supportive of the football team, and it just made us feel really special down there, and it was a great time.
Yeah, exactly what you want. I mean, when this is all going on for college athletes, you got like multiple experiences going on. Not only for you football, you got the school, you got the social, like tons of things going on at one time.
Yeah, and you wish you could just keep reliving that. It's just a crazy whirlwind of experiences and fun, and yeah, definitely gonna miss it.
Yeah, and that's why I like to do this, so we can reminisce and document it, and talk about the good old days,
Yeah.
And the good old days for you, they kept going. I mean, you became like a Canadian football player. Obviously, born, raised, played in the league for many years. Out of Windsor, you're drafted to Winnipeg, and start your pro journey there. What do you remember about kind of first coming in to the Blue Bombers? Probably some nerves. Did they have a plan for you? We're talking about being recruited to colleges. Same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Where they might have presented something on the table for you, right?
Yeah. I did. I was confident that I could do really well, and actually my first year in Winnipeg, I went there after my fourth year, and they offered me a practice roster spot, but then I ended up going back to school, started my master's, and played a fifth year. And that actually, even just getting that practice roster spot, I remember that being a pretty big shock, and because I was confident that I could make it, and I had done so well before, and even just a little setback like that, I remember being, I was a bit sad about that, but I came back at the end of my fifth year at Windsor, that same year of the CFL. We got knocked out of the playoffs at Windsor, and the team called me back, and I ended up playing that same year a week later for Winnipeg, and I got thrown in at tailback in the end of the second quarter for the rest of the game. My first week there, kind of at the end of the season. So that was pretty neat. I didn't really have much time to think then, but definitely, going in, I was always pretty nervous. I was confident, but I was always a nervous guy, just make sure I do everything right, and last thing I would want to mess up and get cut or anything like that. So definitely a lot of nerves, making sure the body is okay. In the back of my head, for even my first 2 years, I would always think about that hamstring injury that I had from university and think, if this comes back, what am I going to do? It's kind of a roller coaster like that. And, and then eventually you get on the team, and you get to feel a little bit more comfortable with where you're at.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, when you're in college, when you're training, whatever, you're like, you can do it, you can make it to pro. And then when you do, you're like, holy fuck, well, now what, right? Like,
yeah. And just, again, like I said, coming to Windsor and seeing guys like RJ, going to the CFL and seeing some of those players that are just like some of the best athletes in the world. And it's pretty crazy. I mean, I remember the running back, I'll never forget, in Hamilton, ran a 4.29 40, and watching him run on the field, it's like, wow, that's a next level of speed that I've never seen before. So definitely, you see those pros, you see guys that have been in the CFL for 15 years that are just perfect at everything that they do, and it's definitely eye-opening.
Yeah, I mean, between any transition, high school to college, college and on, you're seeing new things, right? So
exactly, yeah.
And you played for Winnipeg, played for Hamilton and Saskatchewan, I like to talk about too. But at least when you first got to Winnipeg, you played 2 years there. So first, pro games, what do you remember, like, kind of the atmosphere at the games being like? It's a little different everywhere when you start in Winnipeg, right?
Yeah, it was, I loved Winnipeg. They loved the team out there. Back when I played, they didn't have the hockey team out there. So it was just us, the Blue Bombers, and the crowd was wild all the time. The whole city, you could tell that they really supported the team. I definitely noticed when you get out west in the CFL, they're more about it, and you can see it more in the city. But it was pretty crazy running out to the fireworks, and you got jets going overhead for the first game. And I remember playing actually my first year for Winnipeg in Saskatchewan for the Banjo Bowl, and the ground was shaking underneath us. That's because everyone in the stands was kicking so hard it was like aluminum stands, and I remember the ground vibrating on the ground, and I was like, wow, this is this is a whole new experience.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. But once you're on the field, that all, you tune that out pretty easily, because you just have to. Everything's moving so fast on the field. You got to be focused. So once you're on there, it's cool. It's you're back to just playing football. But definitely when you're coming out there and seeing everything and hearing the crowd, it's a whole new experience. But it gets you really hyped up and motivated for sure.
Yeah, it's part of the experience. I mean, it's part of the business, part of the game and stuff like that. But for again, like a new pro athlete, like at first you're probably like, wow, fuck, this is cool. And then Hamilton too, like they could be getting pretty rowdy too, eh?
Oh yeah, Hamilton was awesome too, and they were similar, reminding me to Winnipeg. Yeah. And I grew up watching the Tiger Cats, and being from London, they were the closest team, and I knew a lot of people from Hamilton, and it was a really cool experience being able to play for the Tiger Cats and come back, and my whole family would come up for the games, so that was really cool.
Yeah, close. Yeah,
the city was fun. Yeah, it was great time, and now I work in Hamilton now, so
okay, cool.
Stuck around, but
got ties all over the province, right? So
yeah,
in the country, yeah. I mean, because then you go out to Saskatchewan, like Saskatchewan Rough Riders are like the Cowboys of the CFL, right? Like,
oh yeah,
they're fucking huge out there. So that had to have been to wrap it up there too, and win the Grey Cup.
Yeah, it's you're exactly right. Like it's like the Green Bay of the CFL. Like the Cowboys, like they are
the big team. Like,
yeah, I heard somewhere they sell more merchandise than the rest of the teams put together.
They're one of the top 5 in the North America.
Yeah, so it shows when you're out there. Like on game days, every single person is wearing a green shirt, no matter if they're working somewhere. Like you go into a McDonald's, they're all wearing green jerseys. Yeah. It's the whole town, Regina, the whole province just comes out for it, and it was a really, really cool experience being out there and seeing that. And you go to we'll fly into Toronto and play against Toronto, and there'll be just as many Saskatchewan fans there as Toronto fans. Yeah. And then to win it there in Regina for the first time in Regina, it was crazy. And you could tell they were gearing up. We brought in a lot of good players that year. I got brought into them from Hamilton, and I was just one of 5 of the fullback tight ends that had started on other teams. So we had depth everywhere, and it was a pretty cool experience. And we ended up beating Hamilton in the Grey Cup too, pretty bad. So I got to beat my old team. But
yeah, well, at least you won. But no matter what, you would have been there, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that was pretty neat. And yeah, Saskatchewan, I wish everywhere was like had that same amount of attention and hype.
Yeah, because obviously not everywhere gets it, and
no, some other places struggle a bit more, but yeah,
that's it's again part of the business. Not everywhere is 100% successful, right? And again, like being that Canadian-born, proud Canadian player, given your roots and everything, like to win the Grey Cup just had to have been, really cherishing to you. Just again, like you said, you grow up wanting to win the Super Bowl, but we're Canadians, a little different here. So we got
I watched a lot of CFL growing up too. My my dad liked it, my grandpa loved it, so it was big in my family, and to get the Grey Cup was pretty huge. And playing football, I had won my first year playing football when I was 6 years old, and I had never won a championship after that. And I could barely even remember that when I was 6 years old. I don't even think I really played or did anything. But to end it on the championship and to be there for that and just have that whole experience. I had played on other teams in the CFL, and we had made it to the semis on one team, but I had never been on a team that looked like it was that promising to win. So to see that all and to watch the guys battle, and it was a roller coaster of a year. We almost lost in the first playoff game, like right down to the wire, and then to come away and to win it all and celebrate in the locker room. It was a really cool experience, and they had a big parade the next day, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, probably some ups and downs because like I said, they stacked the team to push for that championship in the hometown. And first game that could have been it, right? So now it's like, okay, now let's get on track and get to work, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it was a really really cold playoff run. I've
Yeah,
never
I can
had
only imagine.
that cold. Yeah,
Even
it was
Winnipeg,
pretty,
yeah.
yeah.
But hey, like you said, you ended up on top and ended it on top. Was that kind of part of it? Were you thinking about wrapping it up soon, and this was just the perfect time to do so? Or
Yeah, a little bit. Like I had it in my head. I was in my 6th year, and I was thinking. I also had 2 concussions before, and I had a little shoulder injury. I felt kind of a little beat up, and I remember thinking, if I can win, that could be a good time to call it. And I still don't know if I would have if we wouldn't have won, I probably would have kept trying, because I really wanted to get there and experience that and experience Grey Cup, all that it is. And um, yeah, so definitely, that nudged me towards retirement for sure. And I kind of had it in my head. I knew I was going to go on and do a PhD after. I kind of knew that after a couple of years. I did my master's while I was playing in my first couple of years in the CFL. And then I kind of thought, I'd probably progress and finish off and do a PhD. And after winning that, and I got a call by Western to get into to do a PhD shortly after that. So it all kind of came together at the right time for me. But still to this day, I think sometimes I can work out, I can get back. I want to play this
yeah,
year. I think.
yeah, I'm not
So
that
I
old.
definitely miss it, and it was really hard not to step away, knowing I was only about 28 years old. I could probably keep slugging this out and play some more, but you got to call it at some point in time.
Mm-hmm. That's all you ever did at that point, That's all you knew.
Yeah,
So, like,
yeah,
did you
exactly.
want to keep in the game after? Did you want to at least do some coaching or something, or were you focusing on, you know,
A
elsewhere?
lot of me. So I did train some athletes after. So I worked at a gym, sports science lab, and we trained a lot of football players. Some guys are in the CFL now, and so I kept in touch with it that way a little bit. But I didn't feel like I had the time to go and fully jump into coaching. And a lot of me, because I had been playing since I was 6 years old, a lot of me did kind of want to kind of steer my life away from football for the most part,
Okay.
and try to go and see what else I could do and see what else I could get interested in. And uh, and I knew, and I kind of felt that way towards the end of my career. Like, what else is there out there after, because you're playing all those years, and there's very little job security within the CFL. So, you could bust your leg, and your career is pretty much done. So you really do have to be thinking somewhat of an exit strategy. And I heard from a lot of CFL coaches early on, the best, the smartest guys are the ones that use the CFL to kind of jump shot to springboard themselves into their next career. And I kind of used the CFL a bit to get in touch with different universities and get into a program like that. And so you are always kind of thinking about it as you're playing, like,
Yeah.
it could end up just about any moment. So you kind of need that. And I think I got out when the time seemed right for
Yeah.
me.
Again, timing is everything, and again, especially in a game like football, it could end at any point. And talk to a lot of different athletes in different sports, and a lot of them say that, like, I don't know what I'll do after, but then once it happens, things start to open up, and they're through the game, through whatever you were in. Doesn't matter if it's football or boxing or
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Yeah. And some of my friends said the exact same thing you just said. I remember that playing with them, and some guys talking to me and saying, it's odd, but I almost feel a little bit trapped here because I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
Football is what I know how to do, but from what I've noticed is a lot of those guys, they had, you know habits and good work ethic and things like that transfer well into whatever they do in the next phase of their life. So I think most of them are going to be fine if they
Yeah.
keep that up.
Absolutely. And for yourself, it seems like you're happy, you're as successful as you want it to be. And you mentioned, working in Hamilton now. The only thing I've seen you do some writing as well, writing some articles as recently as this past May on concussions and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, so I did my PhD at Western in health and rehabilitation sciences and did some research there. And I looked at concussions with CFL players. So I actually interviewed a lot of CFL players and talked about basically what makes them underreport the concussion. Why won't they come forward if they think they have it? Those type of things. Um, so I did a little bit of that, and then since then I've moved on. I work as an ergonomist at a occupational health clinics in Hamilton, and then I also work up at Western teaching some courses. So yeah, definitely nothing football related, although I still get asked to coach every once in a while, different high schools and things like that. But I just don't think I'd have time. And now with the kid and everything, it's a little more time consuming.
Yeah, life's happening, man. A whole new life for you now after football, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
again,
but yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, yeah, go ahead.
Like we talked about it before, still some roots here to Windsor. Obviously, with your family and being alumni of the Lancers. I see you rocking the Lancers hat sometime, and keeping in touch with teammates, coaches, God knows who else from university days gets you back down here, and it's probably good to do that, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I rock a lot of Windsor gear. Yeah, whenever I'm golfing, I'm wearing something Windsor for sure, either the hat or the shirt. You know, and I know the coaches now, the new coaches down at Windsor, Cercelli's, they coached in London for a long time, up at CCH in London, and JP Cercelli, the head coach, I knew him growing up. We had the same trainer, and you know, very, very awesome coaches. You know, they're going to do a great job there, and you know, I wish them well for sure. And you know, it's definitely fun to come down and see the games. I didn't get to come down and see a game this year, but definitely will next year. But yeah, Windsor, you know, I thought a lot about living there. You know, going to university there, I thought in my head that this is a place I could definitely come back to and live. It's just didn't work out that way where I got hired and things that went on, but definitely love the city.
Yeah, it's cool to hear, man. Well, that's why we do this. You know, we obviously talk about Windsor sports. We talk about the city as well. I've seen you golfing with the Lancers hat. I think you guys were even at Ambassador Seven Lakes or something. So come down.
Yeah, we did the Windsor alumni. I did the Windsor alumni golf, and then I also did the alumni football Windsor golf tournament. And those were awesome because you see all the old guys that you hadn't seen in 10 years, and honestly, it's like you just saw them last week. It's just instantly back to normal. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
And having some fun playing golf. It's not like you're going out there and playing a game of football. It's a little different going to swing the clubs, maybe have a beer or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, golf's a little easier on the body.
Yeah, that's why I like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that's cool stuff. I mean, again, we always like to talk to people who have made their way through Windsor at any point, from Windsor, whatever, and to still think about those days and you know, kind of be proud of your roots just from being here for 5 years of your life. You know, it's cool stuff. So thanks.
Yeah, so a lot of my best friends are from Windsor, and you know, it's going to be a part of me forever.
It's fantastic, man. Thanks so much for coming on and telling these stories and taking the time to talk to me, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.